Okay, so here just quickly I'm going to tell you a little bit about layers. So in all the other tutorials I tell you to make a background copy layer, but what do layers actually do? If we were to just create a new layer, that automatically makes a new one on top of your most recent layer. So whichever one you had selected, it'll make a layer on top of that. So when it's highlighted in blue, you know that that's the active layer that you're affecting. So right now this layer is empty. It's just transparent. There's nothing on it. So you know when you take the paint bucket tool, like when you're using like Microsoft Paint, if you were to use the paint bucket on a picture like this, it would try to fill in this white area, which is my completely blown out sky in this picture. But if we do it on this layer, because this is a different separate layer that is not connected to the image behind it, it's just going to fill in the whole thing. So this is a filled in paint bucket layer with just a normal setting. Now one of the first things I can edit is the opacity. So if I brought down the opacity to 40%, you can still see how that blue is kind of affecting it, but now it's not as opaque. We can see through it. It's only 40% opacity. The more opacity we bring up, the darker the blue gets. We also have things called blending modes. So we have all these different blending modes for our layers. So for example, darken. Whichever color is darker, either the one in this layer behind it or the blue, that's the color that's going to show up. So our sky was completely white, so this blue is darker than the white, so that's why you can see it there. So everywhere that the blue is the darker color, it's going to appear in the picture. You can also change the opacity for those. For every different kind of layer, you can change the opacity. Multiply is a really common one, where it just kind of it bumps up the contrast and it combines the two layers. Color burn creates some interesting effects. So I'll show you what that would look like if we were to change the color that is going on top. So there's what it would look like in red. Creepy. Change it back to blue. So different effects depending on what color you're using. Linear burn. There it is with red. And again, darker color. Lighten just makes it all light and pretty. So if you're going for that kind of effect, that's a good way to get it. Yeah, so those are your different blending modes. Alright? So that's just a fun thing to know about. And again, if I turn this off, that's what my original looks like. So there you go. Layers and blending. Okay, so I've turned off the visibility of my layer right now. To turn it back on, I can just press my eyeball, or my space where my eyeball should be. So let's say I'm going to choose multiply. Let's say I'm going to do multiply. And I'm going to turn down the opacity a little bit. But say that I don't want any multiply effects on my sky for whatever reason. I want to get rid of it from my sky. So I can either go into my background copy, select the sky, go into layer 1, and delete, like that. And I'm just going to undo that with Control Z, deselect. Or another way that I could do it is use my eraser tool. So up here, I can adjust how big my eraser is, and I can also adjust the hardness of the edge. So when it's 100, it goes like that. When it's way down at 0, it's much softer. Okay, so that's what that means. So I can erase parts of layers, and it really doesn't matter. And you can see in my little layer preview down there that I'm getting away from this layer, and this layer is just completely unaffected. This layer's fine. Nothing is happening to it. If I started erasing on this layer, and if you cannot see my background, you can see that I'm just getting rid of this picture. Like I'm just completely erasing it. And you can still kind of see the blue from my top layer that's coming through there. Okay, so if I turn off my top layer, oh, I'm erasing my picture. We don't want that. So I'm going to undo, and I did it more than once, so instead of redoing my eraser, I'm going to go down to step backwards, or I could do Alt-Control-Z. So Control-Z will undo, Alt-Control-Z will keep you stepping backwards. Okay, so again, here I'm just erasing on my top layer. I could also decide that I want to add some brush strokes to it. So maybe if I go into my brush tool, which is this one right here, and maybe I want to add some leaves. Let's add some nice leaves, just to be a little bit cliche about it. So we're going to bump up the size of our leaves and change them to nice green. So I just single clicked on that color down there, found my green, and now we're going to go, oh, those are big leaves. We don't need that big of leaves. Let's get some smaller leaves. And again, you can adjust like how big your leaves are, how many of them there are. I'm going to put those over top. Or if I just wanted to have normal pen marks, I could do that too. And again, I'm in multiply mode. If I went into normal mode and changed my opacity to full, that's what that would look like, because I'm covering up my background copy. Now if I was in normal, mode and started erasing, well, my image that's behind it would just start appearing because I'm erasing this layer. So that's how layers work. That's how they interact. That's how you can keep your background safe and modify things on top. Okay? So that's what's going on there.